Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Additionally, from December 12th, 2019 through January 27th, 2020, if you use this promo code, you will automatically be entered into a drawing to win a Theros Beyond Death Draft Booster Box. Also, there is another way to enter where no purchase is necessary. See the link in the description below for full details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends with another day of Theros Beyond Death previews for you. And we're going to recap and analyze all the cards that were previewed over the last 24 hours or so. Can today's group of cards compare to yesterday's? If you saw yesterday's video, Wizards really brought it with some powerful cards. Today we don't have as many cards, but there's some really powerful ones here too. If you're curious as to which content creators previewed which cards today, check out the description below. As always, all that information is in there. And a quick reminder before we get into today's cards, if you go over to FlipsideGaming.com, use that Heroes promo code to save, you will automatically be entered into a drawing to win a Theros Beyond Death Draft Booster Box. Also, when you use that promo code, it does support the channel, which is always appreciated, so thank you. But without any further ado, let's get into it. This one's a Japanese language preview, Birth of Meletis, and this is a pretty good limited card. Like, it takes a few turns for all this to happen, but look what you get for a white and 1. You get to search for a basic land, you get to create a 0/4 Defender artifact creature token, and then you gain 2 life. I do feel like there could be some payoffs for life, more on that in a little bit, so that's worth noting. But also when you play this, you're playing an enchantment, getting an enchantment on the battlefield, and those things could be relevant. Some people have compared this card to Wall of Omens. I'm not going to go that far by any means. Wall of Omens is a much better card because first off, you get everything at once. But secondly, you're drawing a card, which early on, I mean, getting a land will feel really good. Later, though, if you were in a tight spot and you needed to see another card, this isn't going to do that for you, and that's a big difference. With that being said, though, I would play this any time in Draft or Sealed. It's got some good economy behind it. This one's an Italian language preview card, which you see on the right, and because it is a reprint, on the left side you see a recent printing of the card for translation purposes, and the card is Banishing Light. This is a fantastic card for the Theros environment. In Limited, you're going to be very happy to play this any opportunity you get. In drafts, you can pick this very highly, maybe even a first pick uncommon in some packs, and you're going to be real happy with it. It exiles target non-land permanent and opponent control, so it can deal with a wide variety of problems, including if you're unlucky enough to run into one of them, the gods. Also remember, this is an enchantment while it's on the battlefield, so yeah, other cards might care about this just being out there as well. This already sees play in Pioneer out of sideboards. I have no doubt it's going to see standard play. This is very main deckable, I think, in the upcoming standard meta with Theros entering. Not only is this just awesome white removal that deals with a lot of problems and is very main deckable, but again, with those gods out there, I think you're going to see a lot of them in standard. This is a 3 casting cost answer to that problem. Alright, are you ready for another push god? Well, I got one for you. This is Heliod Suncrowned, and this card is insane. 3 casting cost, a white and 2, legendary enchantment creature god, of course, mythic. Indestructible 5/5. Only a creature, though, if you have at least 5 devotion to white. But who cares, because check out these abilities. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. White and 1, another target creature gains lifelink until end of turn. This is crazy economy. Let's just cut to the chase. This is going to see standard play and probably a lot of different builds. Right off the top of my head, I could think Mono White Devotion, play this with Linden the Steadfast Queen. That feels like it could be really good. That's just for starters. This is going to be able to fit into a lot of different builds, I have no doubt. Now let's talk Pioneer for a second. There's a card in Pioneer that's going to combo with this to create a 2-card infinite damage combo, and that is Walking Ballista. So yeah, if you can get those 2 cards out, you're probably having a pretty good day in Pioneer. That would also work in Modern as well. And I do think this card has a lot of potential to see play not only in Pioneer, but Modern too. I don't think I gotta tell you this is a limited bomb. If you have a chance to play this in Draft or Sealed, go for it because it's incredible. It is mythic, it won't show up all the time, which is probably a good thing. And Commander players, there's so much you can do with this card. You could put it in like a Proliferate deck, you can put it in a Life Gain deck. The list goes on and on. It's going to be great in that format too. Is this a preview video or is this a Market Watch video? Because it sure feels like a Market Watch video when we're talking about Idyllic Tutor. Yep, this is getting reprinted with new art. Originally from Morningtide, this has never been reprinted before. That Morningtide copy is going to run you about $32. Not bad for a rare in a standard set, huh? So let's talk about the card itself. This is going to be bonkers in standard with Theros coming in. So it's a white and 2 sorcery tutor. Lets you go for an enchantment. It goes directly to your hand. You know what you could tutor with this thing? Heliod, who we just saw, is incredible. Banishing Light, if you're in trouble and you need to deal with your opponent's god or something like that. Or just any of the other gods, any other powerful enchantments they want to give us. This is going to see a ton of standard play. It's almost a little scary to me that it's going to be this easy to be able to search up your gods and play them early on in the game. That feels like the direction standard is certainly going to be going into. So in addition to standard, this is now being introduced to Pioneer for the first time, and I think it could see some play there too, especially again with all these Theros cards coming in. This has traditionally been a huge Commander card though. Commander players that didn't want to spend the $32 to pick up this card are going to be very happy to see this reprint. And aside from that, in Limited in this Theros environment, yeah, this is going to be a fantastic card to pick up to be able to search up your best stuff. This one comes to us from a Japanese language preview, and like Banishing Light, you might recognize it because it was actually previously leaked. This is Ashiok's Erasure. So this is a card that maybe normally I would have said is a little too expensive for standard 2 blue and 2. But with Theros coming, I think everything's about to change. And what I like about this card is not only does it have a very good ability, which we'll get to in a second, but also when you play this, you're playing an enchantment, getting an enchantment on the battlefield, and those things could be relevant. And you're getting 2 blue devotion on the battlefield. So you combine everything together, and I think you have a very standard playable card here. As far as the ability goes, this is reminiscent of Spell Queller in some ways. It ties up your opponent's spell, and they also can't play other copies of the card with the same name. So that's really going to throw off some decks, or at least some hands. Yeah, you know what? Some standard decks might be interested in this. When it comes to Draft or Sealed, you're less likely to hit a card that your opponent might have multiple copies of. It does happen, though. But even if it doesn't, treat this like a forecasting cost counterspell, which is fine to play in Draft or Sealed. And again, you get the bonus of this being an enchantment and the blue devotion, which could be relevant there too. Nadir Kraken. I kind of like this one, at least the design of it. It's 2 blue and 1 for a 2/3 Kraken. Whenever you draw a card, you can pay 1. If you do, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and you create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. So the Kraken goes tall. Meanwhile, the tentacles go wide. That is kind of cool, and this card is definitely going to be something you're going to run into in Limited and have to find an answer to. I mean, you're going to be in a situation where if your opponent has this, not only are they slowly building up a bigger and bigger creature, even though, sure, it doesn't have trample or anything, still at some point in Limited, large creatures can just be hard to deal with. But at the same time, they're just gumming everything up. You can't get by with your smaller mid-sized creatures because there's all these 1/1s on the battlefield. If you don't deal with this fast, you're kind of in trouble. And this is perfect for blue because a lot of times blue just wants to control the game state, maybe just win the game with like a flyer or something while they're controlling what you're doing, and this falls perfectly into that game plan. This could also be fun in Commander with like Mana Echoes and Kindred Discovery, for example, so I do think it could see some play there too. This one's an Italian language preview, One with the Stars. It's actually a functional reprint of a Mystery Booster playtest card called Enchantmentize. So I guess some of those cards might be showing up in standard sets in the future. There's an example right there. Now, when it comes to Limited, and we'll start there with this card, this is your classic quote-unquote blue removal, right? It's not going to deal with a creature's abilities, but it kind of pulls them out of combat by turning them into an enchantment. It can also go on an enchantment, but the main reason you would do that is if your opponent plays a god and maybe they're not a creature yet, you want to put this on just in case they're about to turn into a creature. So I guess that's good. Also, it has to say enchantment because it has to still be able to enchant the card when it is no longer a creature. But for the most part, you're using this to either get a creature out of your way so you can keep dealing damage, or protect yourself against a powerful creature that could be on the battlefield. But it is a little annoying, of course, that the abilities will persist. The upside, though, this is an enchantment, and there might be other cards that care about that in your deck. Now, when it comes to standard, could this see some play? Maybe out of sideboards of like a mono blue devotion deck. This does add to the devotion by 1 if it's on the battlefield, so that's a thing. And yeah, I mean, it could slow down your opponent a little bit. 4 is a pretty heavy price, though, to ask for something like this, I think. So maybe there might be a very specific circumstance, but I don't think this is going to see a ton of standard play or anything like that. One other kind of side note that you could do with something like this, and again, I don't really think it's going to be viable in standard, maybe something that you could pull off in Limited, though. You could actually put this on one of your creatures to protect it so it wouldn't be destroyed by creature removal. For example, if I had a creature sort of like Edgewall Innkeeper, I care about the creature's ability, I don't care about the 1/1 creature. I could put this on my own 1/1 creature to try to make it more persistent, I guess that's interesting if nothing else. Towering Wave Mystic. This one's a common, but pay close attention to the wording here. Whenever this deals damage, target player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. So not combat damage, not damage to a player, but just damage. So this could activate maybe more than once while it's on the battlefield. Why is that relevant? Well, let's talk about limited first. In a little bit, you're going to see the Dimir Signpost card, and once you do, this might make a little more sense. But I do think in Dimir Colors and Drafter Sealed, you might be interested in milling yourself not just for escape. There could be some other payoffs too. And if that's the case, this could be one of the key commons in limited for that color combination. Now, sure, you could try to mill your opponent too with this, but I do think that's a little risky in this environment because it does feel like there's a lot of payoffs for things in your graveyard, not just the escape cards either, like I said. In Standard, there was a mill deck that was kicking around as recently as last season. I suppose this could enhance it, but for the same reasons I'm a little apprehensive about milling my opponent in Limited, I feel like some of those things could cross over into Standard too. Now, the other option to try to get this into Standard would be to have it mill yourself in some kind of self-mill build that cares about escape cards or, again, other things that could be coming. We just haven't seen enough cards yet to know if that's going to be viable. Commander players, I know you like your tricks, and I was thinking with this one, maybe Chandra's Ignition? That could be kind of fun to try to pull off. I'm sure there's a lot of other things you could do with it too. This one's a Chinese Simplified Language preview, Ephemia, the Cacophony. Okay, so you look at this card and you could imagine an awesome Standard start, right? Your opponent plays a 1-drop. On your first turn, you play Deadweight. The 1-drop dies. Deadweight goes to the graveyard. Turn 2, you play this. At the end of the turn, exile Deadweight. You get a 2/2 zombie token. There you go. At the end of turn 2, you got 4/3 power toughness on the battlefield. Feels really good, but that's a very specific chain of events. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of stuff going against this card when it comes to Standard. It's legendary. It's very fragile being a 2/1. It needs targets in the graveyard for it to really do much. And even if you do have targets, 2/2 zombie tokens aren't going to get you there. You either want to swarm with something like that, or you want to have something to sacrifice them to for benefit. In Limited, however, I think this could be a very good card. It's a rare, you're not going to see it all the time, but for starters, it's a 2/1 for 2 with flying. That alone can be annoying sometimes and can put across a lot of early damage. The 2/2 tokens, when you're able to get them, are going to mean more in a game of Drafter Sealed than they do in Standard generally. And like I said earlier, I do think Dimir Colors are really going to care about self-mill. And perhaps in this world of Theros, you might be milling a lot of enchantments, enchantment creatures into your graveyard, and there could be a number of payoffs for this. Commander, nothing crazy here. I wouldn't want to make this my commander, but I could see myself trying to work it into some enchantment-heavy decks for value. There's some sub-McKinnon art. Mire Triton. This is a zombie and a merfolk, two pretty relevant creature types in Magic's history. But basically, this is a limited card that's going to do a few things for you. First off, a 2/1 for 2 with Death Touch in Drafter Sealed. Like, that's very playable on its own, but this does more. When this enters the battlefield, you mill yourself for 2 and you gain 2 life. So another reason to play this in Drafter Sealed would be if you care about getting cards into your graveyard. Perhaps you have some escape cards in your deck, or like we've been talking about throughout this video, maybe you're in Dimir and you have some other payoffs for getting cards into your graveyard. I also kind of wonder if we're going to continue to see any kind of relationship between the Orzhov colors and life gain. We saw Heliod a little bit earlier. Heliod would appreciate the gaining 2 life on this card. I guess in a few days we'll see more cards and know if that's a thing or not. Escape Velocity. I'm going to give this card points for flavor. I love the flavor text. I love the name Escape Velocity on a card that has escape. I love the art. They did a really good job with the card ultimately, but do I play it? Sometimes in Limited. I think it could be fine in an aggressive deck. Or maybe a Gruul deck where you have some large creatures. If you get to give 2 large creatures haste over the course of the game, that could be pretty decent and could surprise your opponent, at least the first time. And remember too, this is an enchantment, and this set does care about enchantments sitting on the battlefield, so this might be a little bit better in this Theros limited environment compared to others. The next one is a Portuguese language preview, Inspire Fear. Nothing crazy here. I mean, this is a card that you might play sometimes in Limited. It costs 4, which is a little bit much to ask, but it is an instant. And it does scry 2 on top of the ability, which is pretty cool. Prevent all combat damage this turn, except for enchantment creatures and enchanted creatures, so it's a selective fog, basically. And if your opponent is not playing those type of creatures and you are, it could be a pretty big blowout. The problem is, in the Theros environment, that probably won't be the case. So if I'm playing a deck where I'm really heavy on auras and enchanted creatures, maybe that's more of a draft deck than a sealed deck, I might go for it and play this card. Or maybe sideboard it in if I see my opponent is not playing a lot of those type of things. Ultimately, it's not always going to make your cut, but don't forget about it because there are times it could be good. Atra's Oracle of Half-Truths. I actually like this card a lot for limited. It costs 4. On the surface, that might seem expensive, but dig a little deeper here. A 3/2 menace creature. Okay, that's a good start, but I need something else. Here's that something else. When this enters the battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one pile in your hand and the other into your graveyard. So this is going to populate the graveyard, which we know Dimir is very interested in doing anyway. And this is a great enabler, again, for escape cards. And you get a card off this more likely than not, right? I guess the only opportunity to not get a card is if your opponent decided to go 3-0 for some reason, and you went ahead and selected 0 because you really wanted those cards in your graveyard. I guess that could happen. But for the most part, you're going to get at least 1 card off this thing, maybe 2. And even if you don't get the best card out of your deck, because this is high variance, right? Your opponent's looking at 3 cards, they're making the piles, you're trying to second guess what they're doing. Even if you just get a land off this thing, it's a 3/2 menace creature for 4, even if it is 2 different colors, and it replaced itself with a card? That doesn't sound bad if you think of it that way, right? Yeah, this is a great rare for Drafter Sealed when it shows up, and it plays along with what Dimir's trying to do as well. Commander players who are fans of those persistent petitioners, this is an advisor, so make note of that. I also kind of like the political implications of this card, that you could try to strike a deal for somebody to give you the 3 cards maybe. That could be fun too. Devourer of Memory. All right, here's that Signpost Dimir card I've been talking about. This is only going to cost you 2, one of each of the Dimir colors, a 2/1. Check this out. Whenever 1 or more cards, notice that's 1 or more, are put into your graveyard from your library, Devourer of Memory gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. But it has another ability. Pay a black, a blue, and 1. Put the top card of your library into your graveyard. So basically, if you have the mana, you can pump this and make it unblockable until end of turn while you populate your graveyard, which we've been seeing. Dimir colors could be very happy with cards in the graveyard. The legendary Harpy, for example, can now turn those enchantments into zombies. I'm sure there's going to be some good escape cards in these colors. So that seems to be the limited path they want you to go down when it comes to this color combination. And if you can draft around this, yeah, you might have a pretty strong deck. Again, it's a little early to really figure out how powerful each archetype is until we see more cards, but this feels like it could be a lot of fun. That's limited, but what about standard? Well, I think the first thing holding it back is that first sentence that I alluded to earlier. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into your graveyard from your library. So if you have a card that's milling you all at once for like 3 cards, it's not going up +3/+3. It's only going up +1/+1. That's a little bit of an issue for it when it comes to the competitive nature of standard. However, there is a slight chance maybe this could sneak by. I could see it showing up in some kind of escape deck if we got enough good escape cards for standard. Or this could be in a Surveil deck. This is perfect with Surveil. Maybe that's a long shot, but at least it has a chance. All right, that does it for today's cards, but we're going to come back tomorrow and we're going to look at all the cards that come out over the next 24 hours and do this all over again. So until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon and have a great day.